Hi, okay, so we're back with the text as we had it originally again. So it's just text that's sort of using some of the tracking information on the wall. So that's what it looked like originally. In the previous exercise, we used a ramp to give it the look of light hitting it, and we used a solid on the floor to act as a shadow, a black solid that we feathered. In the second example, we used lights instead to give it that same look, and then the lights were creating shadows along the actual floor. Obviously, in both those cases, what was happening though was the text was always flat. While it existed in 3D space, it didn't really have any depth. If you do want to create objects that do have depth, what you can do is change the renderer. So if I click on the text layer, you'll notice the renderer is working on classic 3D. But if I click on that, just there in the corner, you can actually change the renderer. There's two available. There's also a ray trace 3D option. So we'll switch it to that. Now what I found with the ray trace 3D is it generally just takes a lot longer to render out what that object should look like. So everything generally just works a lot slower. So what I normally do is drop like the things like samples per frame, for example. So let's drop that down, I don't know, to something like 4 instead. Okay, and the adaptive sample will bring that down as well. And then what I do is I bring it back up later instead. Okay, I find that normally works better. In fact, let's bring that to 16 then. Okay, there we go. So and you'll see it's kind of switching or loading that renderer in now. So you'll just have to wait for that to happen. And once that does, then we can go on and start working with that. What I've also found as well is actually once you've switched the ray trace 3D render on, if you then go somewhere else, create another comp or something and switch it to 3D, it can automatically usually switch to ray trace 3D rather than our typical renderer, classic 3D, because I guess it's on then and it's assuming you want to use it. So if you don't want to, it might be best to switch it off. But yeah, you find the text ends up looking like that. The reason it's looking like that, okay, is because without any light, any extrusion or anything will just not, it's there, but you won't really be able to see it. What you'll find as well is if you go into text properties, then you'll have this new option, which is geometry options, which wasn't there before. So before we had text transformer materials, you get materials with 3D objects, but not geometry. And it's in there, you've got things like extrusion depth, so you see it's gone to 4. But like I said, without any lighting, you can't really see it. I've actually already dropped a couple of lights in because we've already done some lighting work in the previous tutorial. So, and again, like you'll see, as soon as the switch is on, it's actually having to work its way to sort of put those lights in. Now, what I'd say as well is actually I've just realized my resolution here is set to full, and I should really look at dropping that as well. So there's no need to work on that. Again, it'll just slow it down. Okay, but either way, then you'll see that you've got this edging on there. So as the camera pulls through, and again, as I jump to the frame, you'll see it just takes its time. Keep in mind, obviously, we'll adjust the some of the render settings later as well. So we'll go back to Ray Trace 3D, and we can just turn the samples per frame back up. And what I would say is the lights themselves probably look like they're a little bit too intense now that I look at it. Switch that down a bit. Again, like I said, regardless of whatever I change, it just seems to take its time to sort of do that. But you can see with something like that, then it's working a bit better. Let's bring that down as well. I think that's probably extruded a bit too much. That's better, right? But you can see, like I said, we've got we're achieving or seeing depth on that text, and that is a true 3D object now. It does have depth to it. In fact, if we jump to another view, perhaps, you should find that if we can look at the text, you can see it's actually got depth to it. What that means is, especially when we're doing sort of this kind of camera tracking, is that you can have shots where the camera is actually moving around an object, and you can actually truly move around what's there. What I would say is it's probably worth just giving that a bit of a try and having a bit of a play. One thing that didn't pop up actually when I did this, that did when I turned it on for the first time, is you get bit of an alert box that pops up when you switch to Ray Trace 3D, and it kind of tells you about some of the things that Ray Trace 3D can and can't do. One of those is obviously mentions things like it can have extrusion depth and so on, but it also mentions that it doesn't use blending modes. You can't use blending modes with Ray Trace 3D. And if you remember in the last tutorial I used lights to create a real shadow and then use blending modes in order to put that shadow into the floor. So all of a sudden that option is no longer left to you. So now you would have to use something like solid that I used in the first exercise. So I was going to go through this and sort of play with it, but really I guess it's based on now a mixture of what I did in exercises 1 and 2. So in exercise 1 and 2 we kind of created shadows, and exercise 2 we played with light. And what I'd say is have a go with that. The only reason I'm not going through this as much is because I want you guys to have a bit of a play with getting the settings right yourselves. And I have had a go and I have created something myself. So there's an example of what it could look like when finished that I'll have posted on Mood as well for you guys to have a look at. It's called Car Park Text, and that one generally tracked really well, and the lighting I thought mimicked the lighting of the car park adequately as well. So check that out, and if you want to try some 3D text and have a go at lighting and creating some shadows yourselves.